The Atlanta sun blazes as Selena Jackson steps from her car, her elegance unshaken by a grueling London trip. But her world shatters when she sees her life. Silk dresses, books, her grandmother's quilt, strewn across her lawn like trash. She pounds the door, voice sharp. "Ethan, what's happening?" It swings open, revealing Sophie, the once meek housekeeper, smirking venomously. Ethan, her husband, lounges behind, arm around Sophie's waist. "This isn't your home anymore," he sneers. "You signed it all away." Sophie laughs cruelly. "Take your garbage and go." Selena's heart cracks, but her eyes stay dry. What secrets did she miss? How will she strike back? Stick around, this tale of betrayal and triumph will grip you. Subscribe to catch our latest stories and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Let's see how far Selena's fire spreads. The Atlanta skyline glittered under the late afternoon sun, a mosaic of steel and glass that seemed to hum with promise. Selena Jackson stepped out of the sleek black sedan, her heels clicking against the pavement with the rhythm of a woman who owned every room she entered. Her skin, a rich mahogany, glowed with the warmth of someone who'd just conquered a battlefield in her case, a boardroom in London. Her tailored black blazer hugged her frame, its sharp lines a testament to her precision, her power. She was a diplomat, a strategist, a force of nature at 32, and after a grueling week of international trade negotiations, all she craved was the sanctuary of home. Her driver, a quiet man named Marcus, tipped his cap as he unloaded her suitcase. "Good to have you back, Ms. Jackson," he said, his voice warm but tinged with something she couldn't place. A hesitation, perhaps. She flashed him a tired smile, brushing a stray curl from her face. "Thanks, Marcus. It's good to be back." But as the sedan pulled away and she turned toward her elegant townhouse, her breath caught in her throat. The front lawn, usually pristine, was a battlefield of her belongings. Her silk dresses lay crumpled in the grass, their vibrant colors dulled by dirt. Books she'd collected over the years, first editions, dog-eared poetry, spilled across the steps like discarded dreams. Her grandmother's quilt, a patchwork of memories stitched with love, hung limply over a rosebush, its edges fraying in the breeze. Selena's pulse quickened, a cold dread clawing at her chest. A burglary? Vandals? She dropped her purse and rushed to the door, her fist pounding against the polished wood. "Ethan!" she called, her voice sharp, edged with panic. "Ethan, open the door! What's happening?" The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of leaves skittering across the pavement. Then the door swung open, and the world tilted. Sophie, their housekeeper, stood in the doorway, her once meek demeanor replaced by a venomous smirk. Her blonde hair was loose, framing her face in a way that screamed defiance. Gone was the apron, the deferential nod. She wore a tight red dress, the kind that demanded attention, and her eyes gleamed with a cruel triumph. Selena's gaze darted past her, landing on Ethan, her husband, her partner of 5 years, lounging against the staircase. His arm was slung around Sophie's waist, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her hip. His lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a smile that sliced through Selena like a blade. "Welcome back, Selena," Ethan drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "Though I'm afraid this isn't your home anymore." Selena's knees buckled, but she caught herself against the doorframe, her nails digging into the wood. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "This is our house, my things. Why are they out here?" Sophie stepped forward, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She tilted her AC head, her smirk widening. "Oh, honey, you signed the papers, the divorce papers, the deed transfer, everything." She waved a manicured hand toward the pile of Selena's belongings. "This house, the cars, the bank accounts, and now they are ours. You're just collateral damage." The words hit like a physical blow, stealing the air from Selena's lungs. Divorce papers? Her mind raced, fragments of memory snapping into place. Months ago, Ethan had handed her a stack of documents, his tone casual, almost bored. "Just some routine financial stuff," he'd said, his pen tapping impatiently. "Sign here, babe. It's to streamline things." She'd been late for a flight, her mind on a dozen deadlines. She'd trusted him, she'd signed without reading. Her vision blurred, not with tears but with a white-hot fury she barely recognized. "You lied to me," she whispered, her eyes locking onto Ethan's. "You planned this." Ethan shrugged, his arm tightening around Sophie. "You made it easy, Selina. You're so busy saving the world that you forget to care for your backyard." Sophie laughed, a sharp, grating sound that echoed in the stillness. "Go on now," she said, gesturing toward the street. "Take your trash and leave." Selina's hands clenched into fists, her nails biting into her palms. Every fiber of her wanted to scream, to tear into them, to demand answers. But she saw the glint in their eyes, the delight in her pain, the hunger for her collapse. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction, not a tear, not a tremble. She straightened, her chin lifting, her gaze burning with a quiet, unshakable resolve. Without a word, she turned and returned to the pile of her belongings. She knelt, gathering her grandmother's quilt first, folding it carefully despite the dirt smudging her fingers. She picked up a single book, a worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, and tucked it under her arm. The rest could wait. She didn't look back as she strode to her car, the laughter of Ethan and Sophie fading into the background like static. She slid into the driver's seat, her hands gripping the wheel until her knuckles ached. The engine roared to life and she pulled away, the townhouse shrinking in her rearview mirror. Her chest ached, a hollow space where trust had once lived. But as she merged onto the highway, the city lights stretching before her, a spark flickered in that emptiness. She wasn't broken. She was just beginning. Selina didn't drive to a hotel or a friend's house. Her destination was a gated estate in Buckhead, a place she'd kept secret even from Ethan. The iron gates parted silently, revealing a sprawling mansion cloaked in ivy, its windows dark but welcoming. This was her father's house, left to her when he passed 6 months ago. She'd never brought Ethan here, never spoken of it. She'd wanted their marriage to be about love, not legacy. Now that choice felt like salvation. She stepped inside, the air cool and still, carrying the faint scent of her father's cigars. The grand foyer stretched before her, its marble floors gleaming under a chandelier. She kicked off her heels, her bare feet silent as she crossed to the study. There, behind a hidden panel in the bookshelf, was a safe. Her fingers trembled as she entered the code, her father's birthday. The door clicked open, revealing a single envelope. His will. Ew. Sank into the leather chair, the paper heavy in her hands. Her father's handwriting was bold, unwavering. "To my daughter, Selina, my sole heir. This estate, my investments, my accounts, 30 million in total, are yours alone. No one must know except my attorney." She reread the words, then a third time, letting them anchor her. Ethan had no idea, neither did Sophie. This was her power, her lifeline, hidden in plain sight. Selina leaned back, her eyes drifting to the window. The city skyline winked in the distance, a reminder of the world she'd conquered before and would conquer again. The betrayal stung, a wound that would scar. But as she folded the will and tucked it back into the safe, she felt something shift inside her. The woman who'd walked into that townhouse was gone. In her place was someone new, someone forged, in fire, ready to reclaim what was hers. She stood, her reflection catching in the study's mirror. Her eyes were fierce, her jaw set. "You thought you broke me," she whispered to the empty room, her voice steady. "You have no idea who I am." The night stretched ahead, vast and unyielding. Selina wasn't running. She was rising. The Buckhead mansion loomed like a silent sentinel, its ivy-clad walls swallowing the last rays of the Atlanta sunset. Inside, Selina Jackson sat alone in her father's study, the air thick with the ghosts of memory and betrayal. The leather chair creaked beneath her, its familiar groan a faint echo of the nights she'd spent here as a girl, curled up with a book while her father worked. Now the room was hers alone, and the weight of that truth pressed against her chest, both a shield and a burden. The will, still warm from her touch, lay on the desk, its words a lifeline. $30 million, hers by right, hidden from the world. But even that fortune couldn't dull the raw ache of Ethan's deception, nor silence the mocking laughter of Sophie that still rang in her ears. Selina's fingers traced the edge of the desk, her manicured nails catching on a faint scratch, a relic from her childhood, when she'd carved her initials with a stolen letter opener. The memory brought a fleeting smile, but it faded as quickly as it came. She wasn't that girl anymore, nor the woman who'd walked into her townhouse hours ago, expecting a warm embrace. That woman had trusted blindly, loved recklessly. This Selina, forged in the crucible of betrayal, was something else entirely. Her eyes, dark and unyielding, burned with a quiet fury as she leaned back, letting the shadows of the room envelop her. The study was dim, lit only by a single lamp that cast long, jagged shadows across the bookshelves. Outside, the city hummed, distant symphony of car horns and nightlife. But here, time seemed to pause, giving her space to unravel the wreckage of her life. She closed her eyes and the memories came unbidden, sharp as shards of glass. Ethan's voice smooth as honey, whispering promises in their early days. His hand in hers at their wedding, his vows so convincing she'd believed them eternal. Sophie's shy smiles, her soft-spoken deference as she dusted their home. How had she missed the cracks? How had she let them weave their web around her? Her phone lay on the desk, its screen dark but heavy with secrets. She hesitated, then picked it up, her thumb hovering over the messages. She scrolled back, months then years, her heart sinking with each discovery. There were texts from Sophie, innocuous at first, confirmations of cleaning schedules or grocery lists. But then, a stray message from a year ago sent late at night. Missed you tonight. Can't wait for the weekend. Sophie had deleted it seconds later, claiming it was a mistake, meant for someone else. Selina had laughed it off, chalking it up to a typo. Now the words glowed like a warning she'd ignored. She scrolled further, her breath catching at Ethan's messages. Most were mundane, but some carried a weight she hadn't noticed before. Babe, we need to consolidate the accounts. It's easier if I handle it. Sign this for the house, just a formality. Each request, framed as care, now revealed itself as a calculated step in his plan. Her stomach churned, a mix of nausea and rage. How long had he been plotting? Had their marriage ever been real, or was she just a mark, stepping stone to his greed? Selina set the phone down, her hands trembling. She stood, pacing the study, her bare feet silent on the Persian rug. The walls seemed to close in, each bookshelf a witness to her unraveling. She stopped at the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass. The city skyline glittered, indifferent to her pain. She thought of her father, his stern but loving voice. Selina, trust is a gift, but never give it blindly. She'd failed that lesson, and the cost was everything she'd built with Ethan. Her mind drifted to the late-night calls, the ones that had started a year ago. Her phone would buzz at 2 a.m., the screen flashing unknown number. When she answered, there was only silence, then a click. She'd mentioned it to Ethan once, half asleep, and he'd shrugged. Probably a wrong number, babe, don't worry. But they'd kept coming, irregular, but persistent, like a pulse she couldn't trace. Now she saw them for what they were. Threads in the tapestry of their betrayal, perhaps Sophie testing her vigilance, or Ethan ensuring she was asleep while he schemed. She returned to the desk, her gaze falling on a framed photo. One of the few personal items in the study. It was her and Ethan taken on their honeymoon in Santorini. Her smile was radiant, her eyes full of hope. His was practiced, a mask she hadn't recognized. She lifted the frame, her thumb brushing over the glass. You played me, she whispered, her voice low, venomous. But you don't know who you're dealing with. The realization crystallized, sharp and cold. Ethan hadn't married her for love. He'd married her for the money he assumed she'd inherit. Her father's wealth, though never flaunted, was no secret in certain circles. Ethan, with his charm and ambition, had seen her as a ticket to power. Sophie, his old friend turned housekeeper, was his accomplice, planted in their home to watch, to manipulate, to wait for the moment Selina's guard was down. The divorce papers, the deed transfer, they weren't accidents. They were the climax of a plan set in motion before their vows were even spoken. Selina's chest tightened, a sob threatening to break free. She swallowed it, her jaw clenching. She wouldn't cry, not for them. Instead, she opened her laptop, the screen's glow harsh against the dim room. She pulled up her bank accounts, her investments, every financial thread Ethan might have touched. Her father's attorney had ensured her inheritance was untouchable, locked in trusts Ethan couldn't access. But their joint accounts, the house, the cars, those were gone, siphoned into his and Sophie's hands. The loss stung, not for the money, but for the trust she'd poured into a lie. She leaned back, her mind racing. The pieces were falling into place, each memory a clue to their deception. Ethan's late nights at work, his sudden interest in her travel schedule, and Sophie's lingering glances when she thought Selina wasn't looking. It was a performance, and Selina had been the unwitting audience. But now, the curtain was up, and she saw the stage for what it was, a trap meticulously crafted to strip her bare. Her eyes drifted to the will again, its pages a promise of power. $30 million, more than enough to rebuild, to fight. She thought of her father's lessons, his insistence on resilience. The world will try to break you, Selina. Don't let it. She wouldn't. Not now, not ever. Selina stood, her reflection catching in the window. Her curls were slightly disheveled, her blazer creased from the long day, but her eyes were alight with something new. Determination, raw and unyielding. She wasn't the woman who'd signed those papers in a rush, nor the one who'd walked away from her ruined home. She was Selina Jackson, heir to a legacy, survivor of a betrayal, and she was done playing their game. The night stretched before her, vast and uncharted. She didn't know what came next, but one thing was certain. Ethan and Sophie had underestimated her. They thought they'd won, that they'd left her with nothing. They were wrong. She had her mind, her heart, her father's fortune, and a fire in her soul that no one could extinguish. She turned from the window, her steps purposeful. The wound was deep, but it wouldn't define her. It would fuel her. And when she struck back, they wouldn't see her coming. The Buckhead mansion was a fortress of silence, its high ceilings and shadowed corners swallowing the hum of the world outside. Selina Jackson stood at the heart of it, in her father's study, where the air still carried the faint musk of his old cigars. Dawn had barely broken, the sky beyond the tall windows a bruised purple, but Selina hadn't slept. Her eyes, rimmed with fatigue yet blazing with resolve, were fixed on the will that lay open on the desk. $30 million, her inheritance, her secret, her weapon. The betrayal of Ethan and Sophie had carved a wound deep enough to shatter. Most, but Selina was not most. She was a diplomat, a chess player in a world of pawns, and she was done being played. Her reflection in the window caught her eye. Curls loose, blazer discarded, sleeves rolled up as if ready for battle. The woman staring back was no victim. She was a storm gathering strength, and today she would begin to move. The memory of Ethan's smirk, Sophie's venomous laughter, and the pile of her belongings strewn across the lawn fueled her. They thought they'd won, that they'd stripped her bare. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Selina's first move was a call, placed at 6 a.m., to Vanessa Carter, a name that sent shivers through Atlanta's legal elite. Vanessa was a black female attorney, a legend in her 40s who'd dismantled fraud schemes and corporate conspiracies with the precision of a surgeon. Her reputation was a blade, and Selina needed it sharp. The phone rang twice before Vanessa's voice, smooth and commanding, answered. Selina Jackson. Heard you were back in town. What's this about? No preamble, no pleasantries. Selina liked that. She stood pacing the study, her voice steady but laced with steel. My husband and his mistress tricked me into signing away my home, my accounts, everything. I need you to help me take it all back and make them pay. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. Oh, I like the sound of this. Meet me at my office in 2 hours. Bring every document you have. And Selina, don't let them see you sweat. The call ended, and Selina felt a spark ignite in her chest. Vanessa was her knight, but this was her war. She moved to the safe, pulling out every financial record she'd kept separate from Ethan. Bank statements, investment portfolios, the trust documents her father's attorney had locked airtight. She spread them across the desk, a map of her power. Ethan hadn't touched these, hadn't even known they existed. That secrecy, once a gesture of love, was now her greatest asset. By 8 a.m., Selina was in downtown Atlanta, striding into Vanessa's office. A sleek, glass-walled space that radiated authority. Vanessa sat behind a mahogany desk, her tailored suit as sharp as her gaze. Her hair was pulled back in a flawless bun, her presence a blend of elegance and menace. She gestured to a chair, her eyes scanning Selina like a general sizing up a soldier. Tell me everything, she said, pen poised over a legal pad. Selina recounted the betrayal, the forged divorce papers, the deed transfer, the mockery on her doorstep. Her voice didn't waver, though her hands clenched in her lap, nails digging into her palms. She described the rushed signature, Ethan's lies, and Sophie's role as the loyal housekeeper turned accomplice. Vanessa listened, her pen moving in swift, precise strokes, her face unreadable until Selina finished. Classic. Vanessa said, leaning back. They preyed on your trust, used your absence to execute the plan. But they're sloppy, that's our edge. She tapped her pen against the desk, a predatory glint in her eyes. We're not just taking back what's yours, Selina. We're going to bury them. Selina's lips curved, the first hint of a smile since the nightmare began. How? Vanessa stood, moving to a whiteboard, her movements brisk. Step 1. We audit every transaction tied to the transfer. Ethan's, not smart enough to cover his tracks perfectly. Step 2. We dig into Sophie. She's not just a side piece, she's a co-conspirator. And step 3, we find hard evidence. A paper trail, a witness, something that screams fraud to a judge. She turned, her eyes locking onto Selina's. You're not just a client, you're a partner in this. Ready to get your hands dirty? Selina nodded, her pulse quickening. Whatever it takes. The next hours were a whirlwind. Vanessa assembled a team, 2 junior attorneys and a forensic accountant named Malik, whose quiet demeanor belied a knack for sniffing out financial deceit. They pored over Selina's records, cross-referencing them with public filings. Malik's fingers flew across his laptop, pulling up property records, loan agreements, anything tied to Ethan or Sophie. By noon, they had a lead. Ethan had used the transferred assets, Selina's house, her savings, to secure a $5 million loan for a real estate venture. The properties were registered under Sophie's name, a clumsy attempt to shield them from scrutiny. Idiots, Malik muttered, pushing his glasses up. But they didn't even use a shell company. It's like they wanted to get caught. Vanessa smirked. Arrogance is a great equalizer. Keep digging, Malik. Selina watched, her mind racing. The audacity of it, using her own money to fund their future, lit a fire in her veins. But she needed more than paper trails. She needed proof of intent, something to nail them in court. That's when Vanessa suggested a private investigator, a man named Marcus Reed, who'd worked with her on high-profile cases. He's discreet, Vanessa said, handing Selina his card, and he's the best at finding what people don't want found. Selina met Marcus that afternoon in a nondescript coffee shop, its hum of conversation a perfect cover. Marcus was wiry, with sharp eyes and a handshake like iron. Heard you've got a snake problem, he said, sliding into the booth. Tell me about these 2. She did, sparing no detail. Ethan's charm, Sophie's duplicity, the late-night calls, the deleted texts. Marcus listened, jotting notes in a small black book. "Sounds like a long con," he said, echoing Vanessa. "I'll start with their digital footprint. People like this always leave crumbs. Emails, calls, maybe a burner phone. Give me a week." Selina hesitated, then slid her phone across the table. "Start with this. There's a text from Sophie, deleted but maybe recoverable. And those anonymous calls. I want to know who was on the other end." Marcus nodded, pocketing the phone. "Consider it done." Back at the mansion, Selina felt the first stirrings of hope, fragile but real. She poured herself a glass of her father's favorite bourbon, the amber liquid catching the light. She raised it to the empty room, a silent toast to the fight ahead. The study, once a place of grief, was now her war room, its walls bearing witness to her transformation. She thought of her father, his voice a steady anchor. "When they hit you, hit back harder." 3 days later, Marcus called. "Jackpot," he said, his voice crackling with excitement. "I recovered that text. Sophie sent it to Ethan, not you. It's flirty, incriminating. And those anonymous calls? Traced to a burner phone registered to Sophie. But the real prize is a recording. Ethan and Sophie caught on a voicemail they didn't know was active, laughing about how they fooled you into signing. It's gold, Selina." Selina gripped the phone, her heart pounding. "Send it to Vanessa. Now." She hung up, her breath shallow. The recording was the key, a confession, undeniable and damning. She imagined Ethan's face when it played in court, Sophie's smugness crumbling. The thought was a spark, igniting a fire that warmed her from within. She wasn't just fighting for her assets. She was fighting for her dignity, her future, her right to stand tall. Selina crossed to the window, the Atlanta skyline a constellation of possibilities. The counterstrike was ready. Ethan and Sophie had no idea what was coming, but they would learn. And when they did, Selina would be there, unyielding, unstoppable, a woman reborn in the ashes of their betrayal. The Fulton County Courthouse stood like a monolith in the heart of Atlanta, its stone facade unyielding under the midday sun. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, the hum of whispered conversations and shuffling papers filling the courtroom. Selina Jackson stepped through the double doors, her heels echoing on the polished marble like a war drum. Her navy suit, tailored to perfection, hugged her frame, its crisp lines a silent declaration of her resolve. Her curls were swept into an elegant updo, her face a mask of serene confidence, but beneath it, a fire burned, fueled by the memory of Ethan's betrayal, Sophie's mockery, and the pile of her life strewn across her lawn. Today, they would face her, and they would fall. She wasn't alone. Vanessa Carter, the attorney whose name was synonymous with victory, walked beside her, her presence a blade sheathed in silk. Vanessa's eyes, sharp as obsidian, scanned the room, missing nothing. Behind them, the legal team, 2 junior attorneys and Malik, the forensic accountant, carried briefcases stuffed with evidence, financial records, loan documents, and the crown jewel, a recording that would shatter Ethan and Sophie's carefully constructed lies. Selina's heart pounded, but her steps never faltered. This was her moment, her battlefield, and she was ready. The courtroom buzzed as they took their seats at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Ethan lounged with an arrogance that made Selina's blood boil. His charcoal suit was immaculate, his smile practiced, as if he believed charm could undo the noose tightening around him. Sophie sat beside him, her red silk dress a garish contrast to the room's muted tones. She tossed her hair, her lips curved in a smirk, but her eyes darted nervously, betraying the cracks in her facade. They thought they'd won, that Selina was a broken thing to be pitied. They were about to learn otherwise. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and a gaze that could cut glass, called the court to order. Case number 25 CV 4782, Jackson versus Hargrove and Wells, she announced, her voice a gavel in itself. Counsel, proceed. Vanessa rose, her movements fluid, commanding. Your Honor, we are here to contest the fraudulent transfer of assets from my client, Selena Jackson, to the defendants, Ethan Hargrove and Sophie Wells. We will prove that Ms. Jackson was deceived into signing documents under pretenses, constituting fraud and unjust enrichment. Ethan's attorney, a wiry man with a nervous tic, countered with a rehearsed speech about mutual agreement and marital dissolution. His words were slick, but they lacked weight, crumbling under the scrutiny of Vanessa's glare. Selena watched, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as the opening volleys set the stage for the war to come. Vanessa called her first witness, Malik, whose quiet demeanor belied his devastating precision. He presented a timeline of Ethan's financial maneuvers, his voice steady, as he detailed how Ethan had used Selena's assets, her home, her savings, to secure a $5 million loan for real estate ventures. The properties, Malik said, adjusting his glasses, were registered under Ms. Wells's name, despite originating from Ms. Jackson's accounts. This was not a clerical error, it was deliberate. The gallery murmured, and Ethan shifted in his seat, his smile faltering. Sophie's fingers twisted in her lap, her red dress suddenly seeming less like a statement and more like a target. Vanessa pressed forward, introducing bank records, property deeds, and emails that traced the money's path from Selena's accounts to Ethan's schemes. Each document was a brick in the wall closing around them, and Selena felt a quiet thrill as the evidence mounted. Then came the moment she'd been waiting for. Vanessa turned to the judge, her voice calm but electric. Your Honor, we'd like to present a recording obtained by our investigator, which conclusively demonstrates the defendant's intent to defraud Ms. Jackson. Ethan's attorney leapt to his feet, sputtering objections about admissibility, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. I'll hear it, she said, her tone final. The courtroom fell silent, the air heavy, with anticipation. Vanessa nodded to Malik, who connected a small speaker to his laptop. A crackle filled the room, followed by Ethan's voice, smug and unmistakable. Once she signs were set, he said, his laughter sharp. Selena's too trusting, she'll never see it coming. Sophie's voice chimed in, coy and conspiratorial. And when she's gone, this house, the money, it's all ours. Poor thing won't know what hit her. The words hung in the air, a poison that seeped into every corner of the room. The gallery gasped, a collective intake of breath. Ethan's face drained of color, his jaw slack, his charm evaporating like mist. Sophie froze, her eyes wide, her hands clutching the edge of the table as if it could anchor her. Selena stared, straight ahead, her expression unreadable. But inside she was soaring. The truth was out, raw and undeniable, and it was her weapon. Vanessa let the silence linger, her gaze sweeping the room like a predator savoring the kill. Your Honor, she said, this recording, combined with the financial evidence, proves that the defendants orchestrated a deliberate scheme to defraud Ms. Jackson. We request that all transfers be declared null and void, and that punitive damages be awarded. The judge's eyes narrowed, her pen tapping against her notes. Noted, counsel. Any response from the defense? Ethan's attorney stammered, his arguments unraveling as he grasped at straws, technicalities, misinterpretations, anything, to deflect the blow. But the recording was a guillotine, and no words could blunt its edge. The judge dismissed his objections with a curt nod, her attention shifting to Selena. Ms. Jackson, she said, her voice softer now, would you like to address the court? Selena rose, her movements deliberate, her spine straight. Every eye was on her, but she felt no fear, only clarity. Your Honor, she began, her voice steady, resonant, I trusted the defendants. I built a life with one and welcomed the other into my home. They repaid that trust with lies, stealing not just my assets, but my peace. I'm here to reclaim what's mine, not just for me, but for every woman who's been betrayed and told to stay silent. The words flowed like a river, strong and unbroken. She didn't look at Ethan or Sophie, didn't need to. Their defeat was palpable, a weight that crushed their bravado. When she sat, Vanessa squeezed her hand under the table. A silent well done. The judge deliberated for what felt like an eternity, though the clock showed only 20 minutes. When she spoke, her voice was iron. Based on the evidence, I find that the transfers were executed under fraudulent pretenses. All assets are to be restored to Ms. Jackson immediately. Additionally, Ms. Wells is to face charges for document forgery, and Mr. Hargrove is ordered to pay $10 million in punitive damages for his role in this scheme. A cheer erupted from the gallery, quickly silenced by the judge's gavel. Selina exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing for the first time in days. Vanessa leaned close, her voice a whisper. "We did it." Selina nodded, her eyes fixed on the judge. Ethan slumped in his chair, his face a mask of disbelief. Sophie's head bowed, her red dress now a shroud of shame. They were defeated, exposed, and Selina stood taller than ever. As the court adjourned, she stepped into the hallway, the sunlight streaming through the windows bathing her in gold. The victory was hers, but it was only the beginning. She had reclaimed her assets, her dignity, and now she would rebuild, stronger, wiser, unstoppable. The Atlanta skyline shimmered under a late summer haze, its towers a testament to ambition and reinvention. Selina Jackson stood on the balcony of her Buckhead mansion, the city sprawling before her like a canvas waiting for new strokes. The courthouse victory was still fresh, its echo reverberating in the $10 million judgment against Ethan and the restoration of her assets. The townhouse, the accounts, the cars, everything stolen by deceit, was hers again. Yet, as the warm breeze tugged at her silk blouse, Selina felt no pull to return to that old life. The house she'd shared with Ethan was tainted, its walls steeped in lies. She'd sold it the day after the trial, the ink on the deed transfer, still wet when she handed the keys to a realtor. Today she was building something new, not just a home but a legacy. The mansion, her father's gift, was now her sanctuary. Its grand rooms, once quiet with grief, buzzed with purpose. Selina moved through the foyer, her heels clicking against marble, a stack of blueprints tucked under her arm. She'd spent the morning with an architect, sketching plans to transform a wing of the estate into the headquarters for the Haven Initiative, a non-profit born from the ashes of her betrayal. The idea had sparked in the courtroom, as she'd watched Ethan and Sophie crumble under the weight of their greed. She'd seen too many women in the gallery, strangers with haunted eyes, nodding as she spoke of trust shattered, to ignore the need. The Haven Initiative would be their shield, offering legal aid, financial education, and emotional support to women betrayed by those they loved. She spread the blueprints across the dining table, its polished surface reflecting the chandelier's glow. The architect had proposed a sleek office suite with meeting rooms, a library, and a counseling space, all designed to feel safe, empowering. Selina traced the lines with her finger, imagining women walking through those doors, their heads held, higher with each step. The $10 million from Ethan's penalty was seed money, already allocated to hire staff, fund legal clinics, and launch outreach programs. She'd named the initiative after her grandmother's quilt, now cleaned and framed, in her study, a symbol of resilience stitched from scraps. But the Haven was only part of her reinvention. Selina had spent weeks reclaiming her voice, stepping into spaces where her story could inspire. She'd accepted an invitation to speak at a women's financial empowerment summit in downtown Atlanta, her first public appearance since the trial. The thought sent a thrill through her, laced with nerves. She wasn't just Selina Jackson, the diplomat or the betrayed wife, anymore. She was a survivor, a beacon, and she would not hide. The summit was held in a gleaming convention center, its halls packed with women of every age and background. Selina stood backstage, her emerald dress catching the light, her heart pounding as the MC introduced her. Selina Jackson, the voice boomed, a diplomat, philanthropist, and founder of the Haven Initiative, here to share her journey from betrayal to triumph. The applause was a wave, pulling her forward. She stepped onto the stage, the spotlight, against her skin and faced a sea of expectant faces. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear, resonant. "2 months ago, I came home to find my life, my clothes, my books, my memories, thrown onto my front lawn. My husband and his accomplice stood in my doorway laughing, telling me I'd lost everything." The room hushed, every eye locked. On her. They were wrong. They took my house, my money, my trust, but they couldn't take my mind, my heart, or my will to fight back. She told her story, unflinching. The deception, the courtroom, the victory. But she didn't linger. On the pain. She spoke of rebuilding, of turning loss into purpose. "The Haven Initiative exists because no woman should face betrayal alone," she said, her voice rising. "We teach you to protect your assets, to know your rights, to trust your instincts. Because what's in here?" She touched her temple, then her chest, "is yours always." The applause was thunderous, a roar that shook the rafters. Women stood, some wiping tears, others clapping with fierce pride. Selina felt a lump in her throat, but swallowed it, her smile radiant. She stepped off the stage, greeted by a crowd eager to shake her hand, to share their own stories. A young woman, barely 20, clutched her arm. "I'm in a bad marriage," she whispered. "Your speech, it's why I'm leaving." Selina squeezed her hand, slipping her a card for the Haven. "You're not alone," she said. "Call us." That night, back in the mansion, Selina sat in her study, the city lights winking through the window. Her phone buzzed with messages, summit organizers, journalists, even a producer pitching a documentary. She ignored them, her focus on a laptop screen displaying the Haven's website launched that morning. The design was clean, bold, with a mission statement she'd written herself. Empowering women to reclaim their futures through knowledge, support, and justice. Already the contact form was flooded with inquiries, women from Atlanta, Chicago, even overseas, seeking help. She read each one, her heart swelling with purpose. But rebuilding wasn't just about work. Selina was rediscovering herself piece by piece. She'd started running again, her mornings filled with the rhythm of sneakers on pavement, the estate's tree-lined paths her refuge. She cooked, reviving. Her grandmother's recipes, collard greens, cornbread, peach cobbler, filling the mansion with sense of home. She even laughed, a sound that had felt foreign after the betrayal. Her best friend Lena had visited the week before, bringing wine and bad jokes, reminding Selina of the woman who'd once danced barefoot at midnight. Yet, the scars remained. Some nights, she woke gasping, the memory of Ethan's arm around, Sophie clawing at her. She'd light a candle, sit in the study, and write letters she'd never send, pouring out the anger, the grief. Those words were her release, a way to honor the pain without letting it define her. She was rebuilding, but not to erase the past. She was building on it, stronger, wiser. A knock at the study door startled her. It was Marcus, her driver, who'd become an unexpected ally since the trial. He'd driven her to the summit, waited in the lot, and now stood with a package. "This came for you," he said, handing her a thick envelope. From Vanessa. Selina opened it, her breath catching. It was a legal update. Sophie's forgery charges had been formalized, her bail set high. Ethan's assets were frozen, his real estate ventures collapsing under the weight of the judgment. Vanessa's note was brief. "They're done. Keep shining." Selina set the papers down, a weightlifter. The past was closing, its grip loosening. She stepped onto the balcony, the night air cool against her skin. The city pulsed below, alive with possibility. The Haven Initiative was just beginning, its reach already growing. She thought of the women at the summit, their faces lit with hope, and of the young woman who'd found courage in her words. Selina's life, once shattered, was now a mosaic, each piece, even the broken ones, part of something beautiful. Her phone buzzed, a reminder of tomorrow's meeting with the Haven's new board. She smiled, turning back to the study. The blueprints, the website, the stories, they were her foundation, built on the truth she'd learned in the fire. No one could take what lived in her mind and heart. She was Selena Jackson, and she was unstoppable. The Georgia sun hung low, casting a golden haze over the Atlanta Convention Center, its glass facade gleaming like a beacon of progress. Inside, the Women's Financial Empowerment Summit buzzed. With energy, hundreds of voices blending into a symphony of ambition and hope. Selena Jackson stood at the edge of the stage, her burgundy dress a bold contrast to the sea of muted suits. Her curls framed her face, her posture regal, but her heart thrummed with a quiet anticipation. She was here to deliver the keynote address, her second major speech since founding the Haven Initiative. The nonprofit, now a growing force, had drawn national attention, and today's audience, women from across the country, journalists, even a few policymakers, waited to hear her story. But Selena carried a weight no one could see, a premonition that this moment would be more than a speech. Backstage, she adjusted her earpiece, her fingers steady despite the pulse racing in her veins. Lena, her best friend and unofficial cheerleader, squeezed her arm. "You've got this," Lena whispered, her eyes sparkling. "Go make them cry, laugh, and write checks for the Haven." Selena laughed, the sound easing the tension in her chest. But as the MC's voice boomed, introducing Selena Jackson, diplomat, survivor, and founder of the Haven Initiative, her focus sharpened. She stepped into the spotlight, the applause a warm wave that carried her forward. The stage was hers, the audience a constellation of eager faces. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice clear, resonant, cutting through the hum of the room. 3 months ago, I stood on the steps of my own home, watching everything I'd built, my clothes, my books, my trust, thrown into the dirt. The people I loved most told me I'd lost it all. They were wrong. The room stilled, every eye locked on her. She spoke of betrayal, of Ethan's lies and Sophie's complicity, but she didn't linger on the pain. She painted a vision of resilience, of the Haven Initiative as a lifeline for women facing similar betrayals. "We don't just survive," she said, her voice rising. "We rebuild, we rise, and we make sure no one else falls the way we did." The crowd was with her, their applause punctuating her words, their nods fueling her fire. She shared stories of women the Haven had helped, a single mother who'd escaped a predatory marriage, a young entrepreneur who'd reclaimed her savings from a deceitful partner. Each tale was a thread in the tapestry of her mission, and the audience leaned forward, captivated. Selena felt invincible, her words a bridge between her past and the future she was forging. Then, a ripple in the crowd caught her eye. A figure moved through the back of the auditorium, weaving toward the stage. The lights were too bright to make out details, but something about the slouch, the hesitant gait, sent a chill down her spine. She pressed on, her voice unwavering, but her instincts screamed a warning. As she wrapped her speech, thanking the audience for their support, the figure reached the foot of the stage. The house lights rose, and Selena's breath caught. It was Ethan. He looked nothing like the man who'd stood smugly in their doorway, arm around Sophie, laughing at her ruin. His suit was rumpled, the fabric cheap, his tie askew. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow, the charm that had once disarmed her replaced by a desperate edge. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift, their applause faltering into an uneasy hush. Selena stood frozen, her hands gripping the podium, her mind racing. What was he doing here? After the trial, the $10 million judgment, the collapse of his schemes. Why now? Ethan cleared his throat, his voice hoarse as he stepped into the aisle. "Selena," he said, loud enough for the microphone to catch. I need to say something." The room was a tomb, every breath held. Security guards hovered at the edges, but Selena raised a hand, signaling them to wait. She wanted to hear this, needed to know what could drive him to this public reckoning. He climbed the stage steps, his movements unsteady, as if the weight of his choices pressed him down. The audience watched, transfixed, some whispering, others filming with their phones. Ethan stopped a few feet from her, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I was wrong, I hurt you, I betrayed you, and I've lost everything because of it. I just want you to know I regret it. All of it." The words hung in the air, raw and jagged. Selina's heart thudded. A storm of emotions, anger, pity, disgust swirling within her. She saw the man she'd loved, the one who'd vowed to stand by her, now reduced to this broken figure. But she also saw the manipulator, the architect of her pain, and the audacity of his plea ignited a fire in her veins. The crowd waited, their silence a canvas for her response. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. The microphone amplified, her voice steady and unyielding. "Ethan," she said, each syllable deliberate, "you didn't just hurt me. You planned it. You and Sophie built a lie to steal my life, my home, my trust. You stood in our doorway and laughed as I walked. Way." Her voice rose, not with anger but with a quiet, devastating power. "You don't get to come here in front of these people and ask for forgiveness to ease your guilt. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry you with me when I step into my future." The crowd erupted, a roar of applause and cheers that shook the auditorium. Women stood, clapping fiercely, some shouting encouragement, their voices a chorus of solidarity. Ethan's face crumpled, his shoulders sagging as the weight of her words landed. He opened his mouth perhaps to protest, but no sound came. Security moved in, gently but firmly guiding him off the stage, his figure shrinking as he disappeared into the crowd. Selina stood tall, her chest rising and falling, the adrenaline coursing through her. The MC rushed forward, smoothing the moment with a call for another round of applause, but Selina barely heard it. She felt lighter, as if a chain she hadn't known she was wearing had snapped. Ethan's apology wasn't for her, it was for him, a last grasp at redemption. But she didn't need his regret. She had her truth, her strength, her mission. As the summit continued, Selina mingled with the audience, her smile genuine, her presence magnetic. Women pressed business cards into her hands, pledged donations to the Haven, and shared their own stories of betrayal and survival. A journalist cornered her, asking about Ethan's interruption, but Selina deflected with grace. "Today isn't about him," she said. "It's about the women here, the ones building their futures." That night, back in her mansion, Selina sat in her study, a glass of bourbon in hand. The city skyline twinkled beyond the window, a reminder of the world she was shaping. She thought of Ethan's hollow eyes, his broken plea, and felt no anger, only closure. He was the past, a shadow fading in the light of her purpose. The Haven Initiative was growing, its impact rippling outward, and she was at its heart, a woman forged anew. She raised her glass, a silent toast to the road ahead. The scars of betrayal would always be there, but they were part of her strength, not her weakness. Selina Jackson was no longer defined by what she'd lost. She was defined by what she'd built, and what she would build next. The Buckhead mansion glowed under the soft September light, its ivy-draped walls a quiet testament to endurance. Inside, the air was alive with the scent of jasmine and the hum of purpose. Selina Jackson stood in the garden, her bare feet sinking into the cool grass, a clipboard in hand as she oversaw the final touches for a gathering. The space, once her father's private retreat, was now a sanctuary for the Haven Initiative. Its paths lined with lanterns, its tables set for a dozen women, mentees, survivors, sisters in arms. Tonight was no gala or fundraiser. It was intimate, a circle of trust where stories would be shared, wounds honored and futures planned. Selina, in a flowing white blouse and linen pants, felt a lightness in her chest, a sense of home that had eluded her since the betrayal. This was her rebirth, not as a victim, but as a force of renewal. The past months had been a whirlwind. The Haven Initiative had grown from a fledgling nonprofit to a national beacon, its Atlanta headquarters bustling with staff, volunteers, and clients. Selina's speeches at summits, universities, even a televised TED-style talk had drawn thousands to the cause, their donations and stories flooding in. She'd hired a team of lawyers, counselors, and financial advisors, all women, many survivors themselves, to guide others through the maze of betrayal she'd navigated. The $10 million from Ethan's judgment was nearly spent, every dollar, poured into legal aid workshops and safe havens across the state. Yet, the work was just beginning, and Selina thrived in its demands, her heart anchored by the women she served. The garden was a vision, its roses in full bloom, their petals catching the fading sun. Selina adjusted a lantern, her movements deliberate when a young woman approached, Jada, a 22-year-old who'd found the haven after escaping a coercive marriage. Jada's eyes, once dulled by fear, now sparkled with determination. "Ms. Selina," she said, clutching a notebook, "I finished the budget plan you asked for. Can we go over it tonight?" Selina smiled, warmth spreading through her. "After the gathering, Jada. Tonight's for us to connect, not work." Jada nodded, her grin infectious, and darted off to help with the chairs. Selina watched her go, a pang of pride mixing with memory. Jada was her years ago, bright, trusting, but untested by the world's cruelty. The haven was changing that, not just for Jada, but for countless others. As dusk settled, the women arrived, their voices a soft chorus against the cricket song. They ranged in age and background, a nurse, a teacher, a former CEO, a college student, but shared a common thread: betrayal by those they'd loved. Selina greeted each one, her embrace a promise of solidarity. The tables were set with simple fare, her grandmother's cornbread, grilled vegetables, peach tarts, but the atmosphere was rich with meaning. They sat in a circle, lanterns casting a golden glow, and Selina opened the night with a question: "What does freedom mean to you now?" The answers came slowly, then in a rush. The nurse spoke of leaving a husband who'd drained her savings, her voice trembling but resolute. The student shared her fear of trusting again, her words raw. Selina listened, her heart swelling until it was her turn. She leaned forward, her eyes meeting each woman's. "Freedom," she said, "is knowing no one can take what's in here." She touched her temple, then her chest. "I lost a marriage, a home, but I found myself. That's what the haven is for, to help you find you." The circle nodded, some wiping tears, others squeezing hands. Jada, seated beside Selina, raised her glass of lemonade. "To Ms. Selina," she said, her voice steady, "for showing us we're enough." The toast rippled through the group, glasses clinking, laughter breaking the night's quiet. Selina's throat tightened, but she smiled, the moment etching itself into her soul. The gathering stretched late, stories giving way to plans, business ideas, legal strategies, dreams once buried. Selina moved among them, offering advice. A laugh, a gentle nudge. She felt her father's presence in the garden, his voice a whisper. "Build something that lasts, Selina." She was. But as the night waned, a question from the former CEO, a woman named Carla, caught her off guard. "Selina," Carla said, her eyes searching, "you've given us so much, but do you ever feel the anger, the weight of what they did?" The circle stilled, all eyes on Selina. She set down her glass, the lantern light flickering across her face. For a moment, she was back on her townhouse steps, Ethan's arm around Sophie, their laughter a blade. The memory stung, but it no longer ruled her. She leaned back, her voice soft but clear. "I did," she admitted. "I woke up some nights, wanting to scream, to burn it all down, but anger's a heavy thing to carry. I let it go, not for them, but for me. Because what I've built here with you is bigger than their betrayal." Carla nodded, her eyes glistening. Jada reached for Selina's hand, a silent thank you. The moment passed, but it lingered, a testament to Selina's transformation. She wasn't erasing the past, she was transcending it, each step a rebirth. The women left after midnight, their laughter echoing down the drive, and Selina stood alone in the garden, the stars bright above. She felt whole, not because the wounds were gone, but because they'd become part of her strength. The next morning, Selina was back at work, her study a hub of activity. She met with Vanessa Carter, who'd become a friend as much as an ally, to discuss expanding the Haven to Chicago. Vanessa, her suit as sharp as her wit, slid a folder across the desk. "Sophie's trial starts next month," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "She's looking at 3 years for forgery. Ethan's still dodging creditors living in a one-bedroom rental. They're ghosts now, Selina." Selina nodded, the news a footnote in her new life. She didn't gloat, didn't dwell. Ethan and Sophie were the architects of their ruin, and she had no space for their shadows. Her focus was on the future, a national conference for the Haven, a partnership with a women's shelter, and a book deal she was considering. Her story, once a private wound, was now a public force, its ripples changing lives. That afternoon, she ran, her sneakers pounding the estate's paths, the rhythm grounding her. The trees were turning, their leaves a blaze of red and gold, mirroring the fire within her. She thought of the garden gathering, of Jada's toast, of Carla's question. Rebirth wasn't a moment. It was a process, each choice a brick in the life she was building. She'd lost everything once, or so she'd thought. Now she knew better. Her mind, her heart, her will, they were untouchable and they were enough. As she slowed to a walk, her phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Saw your speech clip online. You're a damn queen. Dinner soon?" Selina laughed, typing a quick reply. She turned back to the mansion, its windows aglow in the dusk. The garden waited, ready for the next gathering, the next story. Selina Jackson was no longer defined by what she'd survived. She was defined by what she'd created. A haven, a movement, a rebirth that would outlast her scars. The Atlanta skyline burned crimson under the October sunset, its towers standing like sentinels over a city alive with dreams. Selina Jackson stood at the podium of a packed convention hall, the heart of the first national conference for the Haven Initiative. The room thrummed with energy. 500 women, from every corner of the country, their faces a mosaic of resilience and hope. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and ambition, the hum of voices rising and falling like a tide. Selina, in a tailored sapphire dress that caught the stage lights, was no longer just a survivor or a founder. She was a movement, a beacon whose story had ignited a fire across the nation. Tonight, she would cement her legacy, not for herself, but for the women who looked to her as proof that betrayal could be a beginning, not an end. The hall was a sea of color. Bright scarves, bold suits, the glint of jewelry under chandeliers. Banners bearing the Haven's logo, a stylized quilt, inspired by her grandmother's heirloom, flanked the stage, their message clear. Reclaim your future. Selina's journey, once a private wound, was now a public force, its ripples felt in the legal clinics, financial workshops, and safe houses her nonprofit had built. The conference was the culmination of months of work, a platform to share the Haven's mission with the world. But as Selina gripped the podium, her heart raced, not with nerves but with the weight of what this moment meant. She was no longer fighting Ethan's betrayal or Sophie's deceit. She was fighting for a future where no woman would stand on. Her doorstep, her life in ruins as she had. The MC, a local news anchor with a voice like velvet, introduced her. "Selina Jackson," she said, "diplomat, visionary, and the woman who turned betrayal into a revolution." The applause was a roar, a wave that lifted Selina as she stepped into the spotlight. Her eyes swept the crowd, finding familiar faces. Jada, the young mentee now leading the Haven's youth program. Carla, the former CEO who'd joined the board. Lena, her best friend, beaming from the front row. These women were her family, forged in shared strength, and they were why she was here. "Thank you," Selina began, her voice steady, resonant, cutting through the din. "A year ago, I came home to find my life, my clothes, my books, my trust, thrown onto my front lawn. The people I loved told me I'd lost everything. They were wrong." The room hushed, every eye locked on her. "They took my home, my money, but they couldn't take my mind, my heart, or my will to fight. The Haven Initiative exists because no woman should face that moment alone. We're here to teach you your worth, protect your wealth, and remind you that your story isn't over until you say it is. The crowd leaned forward, captivated, as Selena wove her story into theirs. She spoke of the courtroom victory, the $10 million judgment that seated the Haven, but she didn't dwell on the past. She painted a vision of empowerment, women starting businesses, escaping toxic relationships, teaching their daughters to read contracts. "We don't just survive," she said, her voice rising. "We redefine. We don't just rebuild, we create legacies." The applause was deafening, a thunder that shook the hall, but Selena's focus was on the women nodding, their eyes bright with possibility. She introduced the Haven's new programs, a national helpline, a scholarship fund, partnerships with shelters in 10 states. She shared stories of impact, a mother who'd saved her home from foreclosure, a student who'd launched a tech startup with the Haven's grant. Each tale was a spark, igniting the crowd's passion. But as she neared the end of her speech, a young woman in the audience stood, her hand raised. The room quieted, curious. "Ms. Jackson," the woman said, her voice trembling but clear, "how do you let go of the pain? I'm trying to move on, but it's still there." Selena paused, the question piercing her. She stepped from behind the podium, closer to the edge of the stage, her eyes finding the woman's. "The pain doesn't vanish," she said, her voice soft but carrying to every corner. "It's a scar, part of you. I used to wake up hearing their laughter, seeing their faces, but I learned to use that pain to let it fuel me. Every time I help one of you, I take that pain and make it power. You don't let go, you transform it." The woman nodded, tears streaming, and sat as the crowd erupted again, their cheers a hymn of solidarity. Selena felt a lump in her throat, but held her composure, her smile radiant. She closed with a call to action. "Join us, donate, volunteer, share your story. Because your legacy isn't what you've lost, it's what you leave behind." The ovation was endless, women standing, clapping, some embracing. Selena stepped off the stage, greeted by a tide of gratitude, hands to shake, stories to hear, cards pressed into her palm. Jada hugged her fiercely, whispering, "You changed my life." Carla handed her a glass of champagne, her eyes proud. Lena, ever the jester, draped an arm around her. "Told you you're a queen," she teased. Selena laughed, the sound freer than it had been in years. After the conference, Selena returned to her mansion, the quiet a balm after the day's intensity. She sat in her study, the city skyline twinkling beyond the window, a glass of her father's bourbon in hand. Her phone buzzed with messages. Congratulations from Vanessa, a producer pitching a docu-series, even a senator offering support. But her eyes were on a framed photo on the desk. Her grandmother's quilt, now a symbol of the Haven. She thought of her father, his voice a steady guide. Build something that lasts. She had, and it was only the beginning. The next morning, she walked the garden, its paths now a ritual of reflection. The roses were fading, their petals littering the ground, but new buds promised spring. She thought of the conference, the woman's question, the weight of her own words. Rebirth wasn't a destination. It was a journey, each step a choice to rise. The scars of Ethan's betrayal, Sophie's cruelty, they were there, but they no longer defined her. They were threads in a tapestry she'd woven into something greater. A call from Vanessa interrupted her thoughts. "You're trending," Vanessa said, her voice amused. "Clips from your speech are everywhere, and we've got a donor offering. $1 million for the scholarship fund." Selena smiled, unsurprised. The world was listening and the Haven was growing. Chicago, Miami, soon Los Angeles. She thanked Vanessa, then returned to her walk, the air crisp with promise. As she reached the garden's center, a text from Jada arrived, a photo of her leading a workshop, captioned, "Learned from the best." Selena's heart swelled. This was her legacy. Not the money, not the fame, but the women like Jada carrying the torch. She thought of her grandmother, stitching that quilt through hard times, and felt a kinship across generations. Like her, Selena was stitching a future, one life at a time. She paused by a bench, the sunset painting the sky in hues of fire. The city pulsed below, a reminder of the work ahead. The haven would expand, its mission enduring long after she was gone. She raised her imaginary glass to the horizon, a silent vow to keep fighting, keep building, keep rising. Selena Jackson was no longer the woman who'd walked away from her ruined home. She was a legacy, a light that would never dim. As the sun sets on Selena's journey, her story leaves us with a powerful truth. Our strength lies in what we carry within, unshaken by betrayal or loss. I hope her courage and rebirth inspire you to reflect on your resilience. Please share your thoughts. How has Selena's tale touched you? What legacies are you building? Thank you for joining me in this story, for listening with open hearts. Until we meet again, keep rising, keep shining, and know that your voice matters.